driving the culture forward. This is Hypebeast Radio. I'm your co-host, Madrell Stinney, with
Ben Rosen.
We're sitting down with John McPheters and Yu-Ming of Stadium Goods. How's it going, guys?
Good.
Awesome. So, you guys are celebrating your 2-year anniversary. How was that?
Pretty exciting, man. It's been wild to think about those early days and what they were like versus how far we've come in a very short period of time. 2 years is obviously a lot bigger than the 1 year, but our team's gotten bigger. We've got a lot of good things happening, and just really grateful to have come this far.
Yeah, I was just sharing some pictures with the guys last night. Day one, we were talking about like pulling all-nighters, just getting, all hands on deck kind of stuff, leading up to the opening of the store as well. Just everyone putting all this energy behind it. And now to today, where we have just a really big staff. We celebrated last night with a lot of them. So it's kind of like to remember, go back to day one, day zero, and leading up to day one of the store opening. It's been an insane ride.
Yeah, and talk about just that growth since the startup. I mean, Palace is down the street now. BBC is also down the street too. I'm sure that's helping with the foot traffic. How has the culture changed?
Yeah, I think a lot of changes have happened from a retail standpoint. And granted, so 90% of our business is online, but the 10% of retail has gotten to be a lot better. Early days, there wasn't much traffic on the block. There wasn't that much going on, and there was just vacant spaces everywhere. And I think we got really lucky on a couple fronts. Having BBC come first, opening up that spot right at the end of Howard, right on Mercer, and then Palace coming shortly thereafter. It's night and day from a strip standpoint. Obviously, opening ceremony has always been right over here. Rick Owens has come as well. There's a hotel at 11 Howard that opened, a good restaurant called Nickel and Diner that opened right here. It's night and day different from what it was those early days when we were here building out the space. It's been wonderful. I also think from a cultural standpoint, sneaker culture just continues to get more and more mass, which drives a lot more interest and helps everyone grow in our space. So that's a big part of it. But early days were pretty scary. I was telling some stories last night around the first day we launched, the first week we were in business, the first month we were in business, and definitely took some fortitude to keep it rocking and getting to where we are today.
What are some of your favorite stories from those early days?
I think we did really well and got a ton of press on Open, and there were a lot of people that were interested to see who we are and what we were about. Obviously, we had a store that looked great and a lot of good content in the beginning, but that doesn't necessarily translate into transactions. I think when a lot of people think about starting a business, they're like, oh, you flip the switch and you're off to the races, and that's not really what happens. It's a much slower cook. We did very few orders on our opening day, even fewer orders on our second and third day in business. And it's not that it's necessarily a surprise, but you just have to really double down and focus on what you're doing, building out your craft, and back against the wall, making it happen,
Yeah, so talking about business, I feel like in New York City, being someone that's not from New York City, you see so many boutiques or just startups where you can just go and find a space or whatever and purchase it and become a business on your own. But a lot of those places don't last for that long, or they just only have the space for just 6 months or so.
Yep.
Can you talk about how can you maintain a successful business so that you do remain in business?
There's a lot of different things. I think one part is that you have to try a lot of things that are sort of risky. Some of them are going to be failures, some of them are going to be wins. If you kind of have a bunch of tests running at any time, that's going to help you get to a much better place. I think a lot of people think with businesses, you can kind of set it and forget it, and that's not what it is. Every day's a grind. Every day is a new challenge. How do you get more people in the store? How do you get more people on the site? How do you get your name out, present it the right way to a bunch of people? I think one of the things that has guided us, and we talked about this last night at our party, even though we've come a long way in those 2 years, in a lot of ways it feels the same. Still the same fear and anxiety and motivation. We still have a lot to prove. We still have a long way to go. The emotions are the same, even though we're in a much different place.
I remember I was reading some of the press from the early days, like you said, where it was it was when you guys got the investment at the beginning, and also kind of when you told people that you were doing a brick and mortar thing. And, you know, I think it's interesting now, like we've seen a lot of more of these things crop up since you guys opened up. What's been the experience of being like a resale retail kind of thing in downtown New York?
So I think part of our growth, and I'd love to hear what Yu-Ming thinks about it too, but resale aftermarket, I feel like when we came in, had more of a stigma than it does today. And that's not necessarily only because of us changing it. I think a lot of things have happened to change the nature of what resale is. It's not as dirty a word as it once was. We see ourselves as retail innovators. The way that we get the product might be different. The way that it comes to us might be different, but we're trying to impact traditional retail and do something special in traditional retail. With that in mind, it's all about merchandising, service, presenting the right storyline to people that they can understand who you are. I think early days, when we talked, I think Yu-Ming was going to be more out front. I was going to be more behind the scenes. I never really planned on being out in the open, but people need to get to know who you are to want to do business with you. You can't really, I mean, me, Yu-Ming, Jed, like we're out there, we're all talking to people, we're all pushing the brand forward, and that's part of what we do on a daily basis.
And Yu-Ming, you know, John brings up a good point that, you know, the term resell isn't such a dirty word or has a negative connotation to it these days. You know, coming from like an extensive sneaker background, like why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, it's always this, you know, talk about how, you know, all these guys reselling to make a profit, but you know, you come to think about it, it's normal people just trying to make a living. You know, it's like if you can't find a job, go resell. You know, like I was randomly watching a Facebook video last night. It was Gary Vee, and he was talking about like, you know what, you could go down to the dollar store, you can buy some of the stuff for $1 and resell it on eBay for $5. You know, that's a real deal. You know, if
the hustler mentality.
That's the hustle. You gotta, like, don't ever say you're broke. Don't ever say like you don't have any money for anything. Like if you can't make rent, you gotta do something for this stuff. So I always like valued. You know, I came up reselling. Right. You know, I got through college reselling. So it's not like, you know, I really value the industry of. Actually, there's no industry, but I really value the ability.
The community almost, right?
Yeah, the ability to resell. So I've never seen it as a dirty word. I always, you know, anytime I talk to people, I always say, you know what? If I wasn't able to resell, I wouldn't be here where I am today, because I wouldn't be hustling on this level and be able to kind of make some early pocket change to kind of get me through college and get me to where I am today. Right. You know, without having the ability to kind of make money that way. Because, you know, like you can intern, you can do all this stuff, you can find a job, you can go work at McDonald's or whatever you want to do. But if you want to kind of really grow something, you got to start somewhere, and reselling anything, not just sneakers, is one way to do it. So I really do not see it as a dirty word. I really see it as one of the most valuable things that anyone can do, because you're learning how to, you know, run a business on a very small scale.
Yeah. The other point that I think gets overlooked a lot of times is that if you take every hot shoe that sells for a higher price in the aftermarket, if all that stuff was available anywhere you wanted at retail and you could find it on every street corner, then no one would want that stuff.
Supply and demand.
There has to be a supply and demand mechanism to drive a lot of the hype, and it's why the brands play into it.
They do. Like
they need to keep that hype machine going. That's in a lot of ways where they get all their PR energy, their brand energy. It's an important part of the footwear industry in general.
And I like going back to what Yu-Ming said. I think that like one of the cooler parts about the resale thing is that fashion kind of does have this like barrier for entry for so many people, where it's like, you know, fashion school costs a lot of money and whatnot, and it's really hard to get in. And I think that resale, like you were saying, if you needed, you know, extra scratch when you're in college, if you needed rent money or whatever, like once you're done with college, you can literally use this as a way of kind of learning how the fashion industry in a way kind of works, the business side of it especially.
Exactly.
Because I think that kind of is still very opaque from the outside for a lot of people. Like they have no idea how that supply demand mechanism works, and the easiest way to get kind of like a face first exposure to it is to literally be on the front lines and kind of going for it and taking L's every week to learn from them.
taking L's is the operative. You're taking L's no matter what.
Yeah.
You figure it out.
Like you were saying, like the first 3 days, it's like, yeah, you're going to take a couple L's, but you have to stay low and build with them. And then, the next week, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, picking up from the having value in resale and having value in sneakers, it's really, without that value, there wouldn't be this sneaker industry.
Right.
Everyone thinks about it as a dirty word, but, it's same thing with comic books, baseball cards, anything collectible, even vinyl toys. It's just plastic. Like vinyl. You look at rubber. We're looking at cotton and rubber, or whatever the new technology is. But without seeing a value to any of the things that we have, there isn't really a sense of who would have a community about sneakers if they're you can just go down and pay like $50 for a pair of sneakers and be like, you just wear this, and that's what way back to the Converse Keds and those days were.
Right.
We're in such a great era that there is an art form. I always talk about the art form of sneaker designers, and that's exactly what it is. It's an art form that you're buying. You're buying into this mad genius of Tinker Hatfield, or some of the new designers out there, doing Yeezy, Boot, NMDs, LeBron 15, which is amazing, and all of these amazing looking shoes versus Keds, Chucks.
Right, so it's kind of like where it goes from like utilitarian, everybody can wear it every day, to literally becoming almost like a sculpture. Like
exactly.
That's like what Virgil Abloh would call
that's
it.
what I consider mass-produced sculptures on your feet.
Wow.
So you look at the same thing. I just bought the new Cause toys. They're $280. Honestly, it's probably like $10-15 worth of plastic, but you just pay $280 because Cause is a genius, and he's just that amazing that you want to own this piece of mass-produced sculpture. Same thing. It doesn't do anything for anyone except it just sits there. I mean, my cup is as much of a sculpture. It can be like as much of a statement if I put this there, but you can have this Cause thing, and you're like, man, this guy is amazing.
I think the Cause stuff is a good example. I think there's not enough product in the world for people to actually be excited about. So when you're kind of going through your daily life, you see something that's like this shiny blue Cause toy, you want to have it on your mantle or on your windowsill or whatever, For people that have been in the space for such a long time, there's not that many things that happen that really drive our excitement level. So when you see something, you want to go after it. We're all consumers, so that creates the chase.
Yeah. So let's, just for context, let's talk about your guys' background. Like, how did you both get into sneakers, and how much has the sneaker industry changed since then?
So I always say I've been in the sneaker industry a lot longer than I ever planned. I don't think I woke up one day and was like, yo, sneakers, that's the move. Like, it just kind of ended up here. In some way, shape, or form, I've been in the business for a while. The first real interaction I had with it was working with the Flight Club guys and getting to know some of that side of the business. I've worked with a lot of different retailers over the years. I did a stint at Team Epiphany, a marketing agency. I was there for 3.5-4 years, and we ended up running Nike social business at a time when that was a really exciting space to be in. Took it from a couple bodies to like a pretty big operation where we were doing stuff on Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, you name it. That helped me a lot to understand what you need to do to pitch and present to large brands in more of like a corporate setting. But I also feel like I learned a lot about how to communicate, how to present stuff from a content standpoint. At some point I left that and went back into like the e-com retail space, did more stuff there. I was lucky, one of my other partners, Jed Stiller, he and I were part of a retail startup. It was like a side project that early days of beacon technology tracking for retail. That company, late 2014, it sold to Groupon. We kind of had a nice little event around that, and it gave us a chance to both leave what we were doing and kind of figure out what we wanted to do next. And that was when we decided Stadium was the move, and I went, talked with Yu-Ming, and then that's when it all began.
Awesome.
I started in probably like 2002. I was in college. Like I said, I was reselling, not sneakers. I just had to kind of make ends meet. Yeah. And one day I just like caught reading, I think it was New York Magazine at that point. Flipped the page, saw A-Life, saw a pair of sneakers in there. I was like, these are amazing. I gotta figure out where I can get it. I went to A-Life. They didn't have it anymore, so I was just asking around looking for them, and I was introduced to like a bunch of people at college at Parsons School of Design. And one of the girls actually sold me that same pair. It's the Atmos Air Max 1, the Safari ones. And from that day on, I just started researching, and in 2002 there were no blogs, no internet, no Instagram, no social of any kind, so you really had to dig. The only place that was really available to people who were into sneakers was Nike Talk, Crooked Tongues, and a few others, but there was just such a limited amount of resources at that point. I just really spent a lot of time discovering, learning, and all that stuff, and eventually just one day said, you know what, it's got to be something better. There's got to be something I can do to kind of spread some of the knowledge I've discovered. Right. And from that day on, I just started building. At that point, started building an idea. It was called Freshness. Eventually, that's right after I graduated. I partnered with one of my buddies in college, and we started try to do it as a business. In 2003, the word blog had really just come into existence, but we kind of just kept doing it. After a year, I realized I had to find a job. Went on Craigslist, saw an ad that says, you know about LeBron, Kobe, you like basketball, you like sneakers. And I was like, oh, that sounds like me. I applied.
Wait, that job posting was on Craigslist?
I was on Craigslist.
Someone like targeted that specifically for you.
It was amazing. I applied. Turns out it was an agency called RGA.
Oh, no way.
It's they're Nike's digital agency of record. Because of my experience, in this learning about this culture and building Freshness and all that stuff, I was hired to run Nike Basketball Digital. It was amazing at the agency side. So I spent 3 years there basically building NikeBasketball.com from ground up. Back in the day, it was all these flash-based experiences. And from that day on, I realized that, all this kid wants is to look at sneakers. So we made sneakers the hero. And from that day on, the whole Nike digital landscape really changed a lot.
Sneakers first.
Sneakers first instead of, digital experiences around an athlete first, which no one really cared about. You looked at it once and you never go back. The brief was, how can we get kids back here multiple times a day?
To check in. And stay on the website for longer.
But that brief kind of I kept it in the back of my mind, and from that day on, I realized I need to figure out how to get kids back to my website on a daily, and I realized that Freshness might not be it. And around the same time, Hypebeast also launched, and I said, these guys do it a little bit better than I do. I have another idea I want to do. It's called, I actually purchased a domain called Sneaker News. I was like, I know people want sneakers. So I launched, I left RGA. I rejected a job at Nike. And I
bold,
risk bold, but
yeah.
It's really I told myself there's a lot more rewards to doing this
your own
solo.
thing.
Yeah, being
it's
able to
different personality
fully
type,
control what I can do instead of letting someone else control.
Of course.
Obviously, it was a great job. It was like the global digital director for Nike Sportswear before they launched. But obviously, I saw a much bigger opportunity
and potential
in with outside of covering this stuff. So I mean, that's past that. Eventually, that one thing led to another. I eventually started doing SneakerCon, and then through my friendship with Coltrane, who runs Team Epiphany, I met John, and I know about Jed through his other business, Greenhouse and WIP, and so I'd also known John's wife for quite a few years. So just that this close circle of friends brought us all together. It's not that big of a community, but we all share love. We all have very similar friends, and it's really about the friendship that we've kind of made through the world of sneakers that allowed us to also get into business together.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot to be said about the fact that no matter how large the sportswear industry is, it's the community of people that are sneakerheads is so tightly knit. Because I feel like there are a lot of the same names that are brought up, and you guys are within that now. Yeah. And to go back to something you guys said earlier, like I think a lot of people, you know, come to New York, they'll come to SoHo, they'll go to the store, and they really kind of, you know, they'll experience it there. But like you said, the bulk of the business comes online, like 90%, I think you said.
Yep, 90%.
So that's still the bread and butter. Is that still like the lifeblood? What has been the digital approach?
In my mind, a big part of retail is about the content, the presentation, everything. That 10%, I mean, what we do in the store drives a huge chunk of the rest of the business. You know, we do a lot of live broadcasting, we do events, we do photo shoots, we get a lot out of the store. And I think especially over the next year or two, we're definitely going to open more doors. Like, I'm bullish on retail, not like ever 50 new doors, but I think we do it in a very small, curated, kind of like step-by-step approach. It's all going to help build the greater brand as a whole. I think especially as traditional retail is having a hard time, as you know, even on this corner right here where we are, all four corners are essentially vacant. All flagship spaces are vacant. The Action's on the side street. It's on Mercer. It presents a lot more opportunity to do exciting stuff in retail as rents are coming down, as spaces are vacant, as you can do pop-ups more easily. You know, in my mind, it's a good time to be doing stuff in retail.
Yeah, I also think like I really like what you said, because I think there is sort of like, if you looked at like Broadway and Mercer as like a metaphor or whatever, as a microcosm, it's like you said, the flagships, the high street stores are all kind of like American Apparel closed down. You know what I mean? Like all of those kind of like mainstays are gone, and the real cult following is for like the lines outside of you guys, the lines outside of Palace, the lines outside of Opening Ceremony when there's a Yeezy drop.
Yep.
So is there something where you think that like these smaller, more niche, community-driven brands are probably like experiencing this boom and kind of like pushing out the bigger brands, or what's the phenomenon?
I don't think they're pushing out necessarily. I think that people want stuff that's special.
Yeah.
You know, like if I buy a pair of socks, I want some special socks. You know, I'm not buying. I mean, granted, I have some like regular Amazon Hanes socks in the drawer. It's not all like wow exclusive socks, but I think that when people see something that's unique and special and it has more of a story behind it, something they can either talk about or get a little excited about, it makes people want to buy something. And that those large flagship corner spots that are just kind of pumping out pure mass product without any of that thinking, it's not really what it used to be. You know, there was a time where people would flock to an American Apparel and buy tons of stuff, and you'd have like a closet full of basics. But I don't think that's really where a lot of consumers are at, especially in SoHo. You know, you're coming here for that culture that's off Broadway a lot of times. I mean, there's still a lot of tourist traffic on Broadway, but I think a lot of people that are really from here are part of the culture. They're not shopping on Broadway, with some key exceptions. You know, obviously like a Uniqlo does tons of really fresh stuff and they're on Broadway, but they've really dug in with cultural elements.
Yeah, I think
through designers and artists, like they're speaking a language that fits with the language of today.
I would almost say that they've done a really good job of seeing like the things that are popping on the side streets, and then like, you know what, maybe J.W. Anderson might be a good look,
or Cause,
like literally a lot of the people that we've name dropped have collaborated with what is ostensibly one of the bigger, you know, fast fashion retailers, but they've done it in such a way where it feels tasteful, it feels special. Like
I also think that a lot of it has to do with speed to market. Larger companies are, the slower they are to move. A lot of the opportunity that we have in general is because we run lean. You know, we could make a decision today and implement it in a week. A large company, it takes a lot longer to get something out. So people that are really shining and they're seeing a lot of success have been able to take that same mindset of a fast approach to getting things done, so they can hit something on trend when it's hot,
right?
Not the kind
6 months down the line,
see it on the Marshall's closeout shelf. You know, I think that's a big part of it. Not only in the U.S. but internationally as well. It's like, how fast can you do it? If you see something as an opportunity, the longer it takes, the more people are going to seize that opportunity before you do.
Yeah. So, you know, bringing up a good point that, you know, that been brought up about like the stores here in Soho that are getting a lot of foot traffic are the, like, you know, the smaller community-based stores, like, for instance, like your store, Supreme, Palace, etc., where it's becoming like a landmark for people to come and whenever they're visiting New York, more specifically like celebrities. Like, you guys get a lot of celebrities that do come through the shop. You've also done stuff with DJ Khaled. I just wanted to get your opinion, like, you know, on celebrities getting footwear signatures these days. It seems like there's a lot more celebrities that are getting their own shoe versus like athletes that are getting their own shoe.
A couple different things you could say on this. I think that kids today have gone entertainment. They're not as into sports as they were. I'm sure there are a lot of kids that are into sports, but kids that are into popular culture, it's more of an entertainment thing, which means it's artists, it's maybe even influencers that aren't artists, a lot of musicians, not as much athletes. Like a big athlete doesn't drive quite the same swell and trend that they used to.
I think a good case study for that would be like how everybody likes, or not likes, but is all about LeVar Ball versus Lonzo Ball.
Yeah.
That's like a case study right there.
Yeah. I mean, you can see them all over the place. Like I think one of the reasons why Adidas has done so well in the past couple of years is that they've really embraced entertainers super aggressively. Obviously, Kanye was at Nike first, and he's at Adidas now. But beyond that, you've got Pusha T, you've got Pharrell, you've got tons of these artists, that they dial up, and it speaks to where kids are at today. Like, they're on Instagram, they're listening to music, they're doing all sorts of stuff. They're not watching the game the same way that our generation was. I'm sure there are a lot of kids watching the game, but it's not the same from a cultural standpoint.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a fan base thing, you know. It's all these artists that have fan bases. You know, we look at Rihanna; she caters to a women crowd. You look at Drake, you look at Kanye and Pharrell, and all these guys. They really drive some of this stuff. It's incredible for them to really be able to do what they do today. But it's the same thing. It's like LeBron's got a fan base. You know, he does sport, sure, but these other people also do sport on some level. Yeah. You know, as Kanye says, he's playing himself one-on-one a lot of times on stage. So that is very, very true. Yeah. You know, they're on their feet. You know, like, so it's actually quite amazing that all these companies are recognizing who the right people they should really work with are.
It's almost like regardless of the medium of what they're doing, it's like if they can pack a stadium, it's like you can probably sell some of the people in that stadium some shoes. Like, I think that
you go to a concert. Like, I went to the Future Drake show at the Garden, and literally the number of kids you saw wearing the merch they had just bought, that's night and day from like a decade ago.
Exactly.
Like, people might afterthought buy something on the way out to give to their kid or back then. But now, people, lines,
wear it right there,
buying it, throw it on, be in the show with it. The whole crowd is wearing merch. Like, that's a much different person.
I remember last year when I went to the Meadows Festival. I think you were there as well, Madrell. I think the most noticeable thing was that it was like every single person in that crowd was wearing a Kanye West T-shirt. Like, it wasn't a brand. It wasn't any, and the line to get that merch literally stretched to the turnstile to get into the festival.
Like, the show started. Everyone's out there performing, and kids are still waiting online to get the merch.
Yeah, they were there for the merch over the performances sometimes, because you can tell, like, they want to go to stadium goods the day after with those T-shirts, man. Like, it's a come up. Like, how much was the ticket to Meadows? Like $100?
You're not wearing 5 T-shirts.
How many T's? Yeah, exactly. How many sweatshirts do you need, man? How many sweatshirts are you leaving this concert?
So in terms of like captivating like the culture at the current moment, which sports brand, in your opinion, do you think like is doing the best job of that?
That's a dangerous question. I think everyone's doing a great job at certain things. I think that you always see ups and downs with brands or silhouettes. But people at all of the major brands are very smart, and they have great insight into what they're doing. I think right when we opened about 2 years ago, it was at this point when Jordan had definitely oversaturated the market and kind of had a rough 12 months after that. And they've done a lot to pick it back up, drive a lot of excitement, kind of changed some of the nature of their releases. You know, you never really know what's going to happen in business, but you seize your opportunities, you grow where you can, and then you deal with things when they go another direction. Similarly, like Adidas, over the past 2 years, they've done a lot of exciting things. One of the things I really believe, having sold a bunch of sneakers over the past 2 years, there's a lot of interest in new silhouettes. When Nike releases a new Vapor Max, it's like, wow, this is some hot shit. It's a really cool style. people want to get into it the same way as an NMD or an Ultra Boost. Retro is in a lot of ways where sneaker culture came from. A lot of those really legacy old styles. I was like an old runner guy, 95s, 90s, 97s. That's generationally, I think the kids today, they want something new for their generation, and that's why a lot of these new styles that you've never seen before are driving a lot of that Eden hype.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Do you see, like, you know, for your store that a lot of newer releases are selling at a higher price point than, you know, releases than shoes that were like released decades ago?
Yeah, I mean, in some cases, definitely. You know, I mean, I wouldn't say all, because there's a million little one-off cases in what we sell, but yeah, NMDs, Ultra Boost, Vapor Max, the 10 off-white shoes,
Rihanna Creepers.
You know? Yeah, Rihanna Creepers, Rihanna Fenties. I mean,
Fear
sell
of
a ton
God
of those all
military
day.
sneakers, like literally. I mean, I think it is. Yeah, I think a lot of what these brands are struggling with is finding that sweet spot between like nostalgia and novelty.
And I think that's one of the beautiful things about where we're at today is, like, so you take 97s as an example. I mean, this year has been, I've literally bought 30 pairs of shoes. That's like my go-to. And I'm thrilled that retro story is still strong and relevant, and it matters. I think it's about a mix and a balance. I think what happened was the pendulum had swung way too far in the direction of retros. It can't be all brand new stuff, because then people don't really have the reference points. It's got to be somewhere in the middle. You got to have a good amount of retro styles, things to kind of keep that legacy alive, and then you have to have new, exciting styles to bring new things to the market and innovate.
Word. I've been to that the back door, so to speak, of Stadium Goods, and I was wondering, what is the legit check process like? Like, I know quality control is crucial for you guys, but what is the...
You know, we're lucky to have some really good people that have been doing it for a long, long time. Some of the guys there have a decade-plus experience validating shoes. Fakes 10 years ago look a lot different than fakes today. I mean, it's very scary, but at the same time, it's all about education, staying versed in what's happening, knowing what changes in counterfeits as new styles come out, whether counterfeits get better. The other thing is that a lot of times quality from brands declines. So you've got quality of counterfeits that goes up, quality from the brands that declines, and definitely makes it trying, but thankfully we have some really good people, and we stay on it, and we teach ourselves, and we train, and that's a big part of what our focus is as a brand.
Yeah.
I don't want to go through the whole list.
I was gonna say,
but
how much of the sauce?
The thing is, it's different on every shoe. You know, like someone can open up a box and smell it and be like, "Wow, this is not right." You know, which is sometimes that's what it is.
Smell test.
Yeah. Sometimes it's paint. Sometimes it's laces. Sometimes it's something labeling on the box or the insole or whatever. There's tells all the time.
Right.
So I mean, thankfully I don't have to do that myself, because I don't know all those things. But
I mean, no matter what these counterfeiters do, there's just no way for them to really legitimize their process. You know, they just can't invest the millions and billions of dollars into the correct factory procedure, the QA, all that stuff,
research
to get
and
it to a
development.
point where it is the absolute perfect replica. And when that happens, they basically made a real shoe. But there's no way for them to do that without investing the amount of money that they have.
And the other thing is that, so if you're Nike and you've got God knows how many factories pumping out products, there's a lot of variation in output.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So there are certain shoes where the fakes actually look like higher quality than the real ones that come from the brands.
Yeah.
There's no way they can, no matter how hard they work, they can't ever get it to match exactly, because you never really know what the brand's output is going to be.
Gotcha. So I got a question. Then how do you stay safe when, like, you know, for instance, in an upcoming release, and you're starting to see like leaks of those shoes, or just people with those pairs like in their hands beforehand, like, you know,
the
what are you doing that
ones.
exactly with the whole off-white collection, or for instance the Easy Wave Runner 700s, where you're already seeing people in pairs when they haven't really shipped them out yet, or the off-white collection when it didn't release yet in full, and you're seeing people with pairs early and they come into your shop. Like, what do you do then?
Look, it takes more on that first pair when you get it to know that you're good money. Like, obviously there's I think one of the things that's very unique about Stadium Goods, there's a lot of relationships behind it. Like with Supreme, for example, we don't take Supreme from the general public. If you have a shirt that you want to sell and you want to walk in, we're not taking that, because a printable T-shirt, it's a lot harder to. There's not a million tells on a screen printed T-shirt.
True.
On those first pairs, it means that we're diligent with every pair we get, but we really look at those early pairs. We understand where they came from. We understand the story behind them. We understand kind of comparing that against a million different reference points in the digital world. We do a lot of diligence on those early
You put
pairs.
them under the microscope. So
Yeah, because you have to. But at the same time, 99% of the time, that first early pair isn't from some random guy walking in off the street that we've never seen before.
It's from someone that you built a relationship with,
Yeah.
or no?
Now for
Legit check the person.
The person.
we legit check our people.
Yep.
And this is more of a State of the Union, bigger picture kind of question. But recently with Supreme kind of selling a 50% stake for $500 million, I guess sort of the question becomes, how does that news sort of trickle down for you guys? What does that mean for the resale market as a whole in your perspective?
I was asked this question a couple times. I'm sure you've been asked this question a couple times too, but I don't think it really changes anything. I think that Supreme is arguably the best company in the entire world at curating demand for their products, keeping that tight supply. I don't think very much changes. I think looking at who invested in them, and who knows what's going to happen, but I think a lot of that's going to go to retail expansion into markets where there's tons of demand already sitting there for their products. I don't know. I don't think it skips a beat. I think it's a great indicator of how things have changed in our world.
Yeah, was it like a validation?
How the rest of the world and the investment community and large corporations view what's happening off Broadway. So to me, it was very exciting.
Yeah, same. I have the same thoughts about Supreme and their investors. I mean, it's just them being that smart. They've been incredibly smart up until this point, and for them to take the investment, it doesn't mean that they're gonna fully sell out. It's them being able to collaborate on a very high level with a company like Louis Vuitton, and also, sure, they collaborated with this big, massive company, but at the same time, were you able to get it? Not really. And is that product really expensive? It is. It's just that higher of a caliber for these guys. Yeah. So we're not gonna really see Supreme all of a sudden appear at Urban Outfitters. That's what happened with Stussy, and they kind of pulled it all back. The guys
as well.
Yeah, look, there's a bunch of it. It's funny talking about Bape as an example. Bape is doing really, really well, but there was a time where they kind of jumped the shark. They flooded the U.S. market. It was down in the dumps, and then it kind of came back heavy after they got a handle on it.
They jumped the shark hoodie.
Yeah, it was. If anyone can handle it, it's going to be Supreme. They can kind of take that and continue to grow by raising the bar, doing more, sticking to their model, Yeah,
and they're constantly surprising me with something new. It's like, what are we going to get next? A table? We already have a table. We're going to get... It's
guitar,
just are we gonna get a guitar? We're gonna get a TV,
motorcycle.
Is it gonna be a Supreme iPhone?
Yeah.
At what point? But at the same time, you realize that based off of what they do and how they're gonna release the product, even if they make an iPhone, it's not gonna be at every billion Apple store, whatever. I'm just making it up, but we know for a fact that these guys are just so intelligent in terms of how they run their business that you just won't see them fully oversaturate the market.
Word.
Yeah, and speaking of valuations of markets, for instance, the sneaker resale market is said to be worth over $1 billion.
I think that's very conservative, personally.
You think it's higher?
So in my mind, the way that we look at the business, the athletic footwear market in the world is argued to be at an $85 billion value. That's including retail and brands and a million things that are taking place.
Wow.
I think that idea of first of all, I think that number's low.
Yeah.
Seeing how much ground we've covered in 2 years proves that number is low in my mind. There's a much bigger market there for what is aftermarket. But the way we see it is more impacting the greater market as a whole, whether it's traditional footwear retail, direct-to-consumer footwear retail, way footwear brands interact. Like I don't see that bucket as being relevant to where we're going and what we're doing necessarily.
Do you think the valuation is higher or lower than like, how much the sneaker industry is making?
I mean, I think it's different. Like, okay. I think we're enabling commerce, and we're a part of the larger commerce conversation. And I think a lot of people see that, and that's why we have investors. A lot of people in our space have investors. There's a lot of people that are kind of chasing this idea of what it's going to become. It's not necessarily based on what it is now. So I think it's changed a lot in the past couple of years that we've been in the mix.
But so would you say that business is definitely like doing well though for like, okay. So that being said, like what do you think is going to be the future for like Stadium Goods or other like consignment shops?
I mean, I think you'll see this move, this consistent trajectory of us getting more and more into what looks like traditional retail, into what that space is, whether it's more doors, whether it's customers that are just buying products from us, whether or not they think of it as resale or aftermarket or whatever, they're buying pairs of shoes. We're selling shoes. We have something that they want. They're coming in, they're buying it. Like the whole idea of marketplace, consignment, doesn't really matter to the end consumer. They see something they want, they buy
product.
Yeah.
I mean, it all goes back to what we talked about earlier about value, having us be able to be one of the drivers of value for people who think about sneakers. Without the drivers in the market, there wouldn't be an $80 billion a year business in terms of athletic footwear, apparel, and all that stuff. It is really same thing with Supreme. If there's no value there, why are they worth so much? Why are people fighting to get their stuff? And it's really just that. It's really like us being able to continue to help drive a lot of this value for a lot of these people. I still go out there and I'm not like, this super cool kid who can just go get anything. Like I'm having a hard time getting off-white Jordan 1s. Yeah. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to Stadium Goods and I'm going to buy them pair in the aftermarket because I see so much value in that. I really want
We'll get you a good price.
But it's the same.
Friends and family.
It's the same thing, like we look at, and I'm still a really big consumer. I'm going out there. Doesn't matter which marketplace it is. I shop on eBay quite a bit. If it's not at Stadium Good, I'm on eBay buying things. Like if I can't get the Stone Island Supreme jacket, that's what I'm gonna have to do. Because you know what, I want something I can't get at Uniqlo. Like if I was a regular guy, I'm gonna go in there and buy a puffer jacket for like $85, but I just paid significantly over retail for something that I saw value in.
It's kind of like one of the ugly underpinnings of instant gratification. You can't not have something you want anymore. Like for a lot of people, it's like if you have this fixation in your head, it's like, man, I need that. I need it. It's just itching. Yeah. You've got it. The only way to,
There's that, and there's also collecting.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about collecting. There's people who buy it for wearing, then there's people who buy it for collecting. There's certain things I just buy strictly for collecting.
Bear bricks.
I will never ever put it on my feet, or bear bricks, or Cause toys, or whatever it is. Some of this stuff, like I bought all these Cause toys, I never even put them out. But at some point, I bought this 1000% bear brick from way back in the day, the dissected bear brick. Bought it for $600. I just looked on eBay yesterday. It's like $4,000.
So it's just like material investments too. It's literally like people that are like, they'll come into your guys' store and be like, man, that's a really cool Supreme keychain. And then 4 years later, that $32 keychain is,
Actually, that's exactly another thing we didn't talk about is investing.
Right.
There's a lot of things that people can do. Whatever hustle that you have, whether it's reselling product you buy at the dollar store, reselling sneakers, reselling Supreme, or you buy things to really invest in. There's people who invest in stocks, and there's people who invest in streetwear and sneakers. I've done all of the above, and some of it's paid out really well. I recently I bought a pair of the Parapata Air Max 1s way back in the day for $1,000 because I couldn't get it at retail. And I was like, man, I just paid $1,000 for this pair of shoes. I sold it last year for $4,500 because someone really needed it. He's like, I really need it. And I was like, I want $4,500 for it. He's like, sure, let's do it. And but that's the that's kind of, it doesn't happen every day. A lot of it is really just, you're just trying to make ends meet.
And really, that does go back to the point that I made, where it's like, I think that fashion industry, or even if you were to look at like stock market stuff, is like the barrier for entry to get into the stock game is probably around the same as $1,000 pair of shoes, relatively speaking. Yeah. So it's like, if you can invest $1,000 into anything and it values up to $4,500 in the course of, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is.
Yeah, I've messed around in the stock market very, very little. Like, yeah. I'm a like small time investor. Like, I purchased 100 shares of Facebook at $16. It's done well. It's $172 now. So like, that $1,600 investment has turned into a really significant
And it's
one.
just that people look at it when you spend $1,600 on a pair of sneakers like you're a crazy person.
Exactly.
And then they can't really see the fact that it's like,
Same
actually,
thing with
go on eBay.
Yep. Same thing with my $1,000 investment in the Power Powder Air Max 1s.
Yeah.
And there are times where that investment doesn't work out.
Exactly.
It's not 100%.
Oh, absolutely,
right?
yeah.
It's you have to know what you're doing. You have to be smart about it. You have to diversify, have a bunch of things going on if you're going to get to that end result.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does work out as a vehicle. Same way stock market. If you know what you're doing and you
Congratulations, you don't need to go to an office job.
You can also get really burned.
Yeah,
at the same time.
It's so back to our conversation about, like, earlier, or at least what I was talking about, like, you gotta really hustle if you want something better for your life. You don't want to live in the hood. You want to live in a nice apartment in Manhattan. You can actually, there's guys who have, whether it's the street guys selling, like, dollar hot dogs or whatever it is, those guys are doing really well for themselves. But they're hustling. They're standing on the street. It's not glamorous. You're not like, working at Hermes with, nice suit and stuff. But this guy's probably making the same amount of money as the homie at Hermes selling
the floor
handbags.
manager. Yeah.
So it's really comes down to, like, we're making a living, making ends meet, paying rent, getting by, moving on, and enjoying life at the same time. So when people tell me, it's like, yo, you're ruining the game, I was like, okay, man. But you know what? I got here because I needed to hustle. I needed to pay my college loans, and I needed to pay my mortgage, and I needed to kind of just live. So at this point, it's really like, don't complain to me about ruining the game by reselling. I'm going to continue to hustle and resell so I can get to the next level and do something nicer. Have a nice vacation that I didn't have to pay for.
Yeah.
I think that's a good transition for usually when we're kind of coming toward the end of the episode. We like to ask people if you could give advice to a younger version of yourself, like to kind of guide yourself. What would you tell young Yu-Ming and young John as like sagely advice from the future?
It's funny. I actually yesterday someone invited me to teach a high school class in entrepreneurship. So I did. It was like 45 minutes. I had the deck. I was talking to a bunch of high school seniors. And I was like, what do I want to tell these kids? Mm-hmm. And there was a lot. I think I talked a lot more than I thought I would. I was lost for a long time. I didn't really get my bearings, I would say, until I was about 30 years old, which some people, 22, 23, they know it. They're on a path. I kind of figured it out late. But for me, it's always been about just going as hard as possible at what you want to do. And then if you realize that you're on a failing path, pivot and go in another direction, Like, I've tried probably like 6-7 startups at this point. I've had a bunch of failures, a lot of little side projects, a lot of little hustles. I feel part of like why we're winning now is because we put ourselves in a position where there was no option to lose. Like, losing now would be horrible, Like, there's a lot of fear that drives and that keeps you on a path. But yeah, I think you got to try a bunch of things. You got to find your way, and knowing that you're on the right path, it's not an instantaneous thing. It takes time to get on that right path to where you're really doing something that you can be excited about.
Same exact, what John said. I think I would tell myself to, hustle harder, learn as much as you can. I dropped out of high school, went back. I dropped out of college for the first time, went back. It's all part of doing things, learning, failing again, and just keep failing and kind of continuously doing stuff. I think one of the things that I didn't realize that had helped me a lot early on was when I was 14, I was working at a sweatshop. I didn't think it was like, why am I doing this? But at the same time, I was like, thank God I did that, because it's really taught me the value to the dollar.
Yeah.
At this point, I really like look at some of the kids growing up today, and I one of the things that, you know what, just go find a job. Don't talk to me. Like, I see parents that says like, I'm not going to put my kid to work. He's got to go to school, learn. And I'm like, you know what? Put him to work.
Yeah, I used to flip burgers. Like, I've had a bunch of shitty jobs. You know, I think there's this misconception as media glamorizes the success stories and like the kids who just pop it off and get rich, or like have like, wow, that item that sells out really fast, or they build a startup that gets acquired by a company in like a heartbeat. That's not reality. It seems like it is because you see it in the media every day. The reality is that you're going to have to work your ass off and really make some shit happen if you want to get there. And I think a lot of kids today, they don't see that. They think it's like, they think that in 3 years they'll be rich sitting on a beach. That's not how it is. We're old in this game. I don't know how old you are, actually. I'm 38.
Almost 40 years old.
Yeah, so,
yeah, same.
I feel old. We've been through a lot, you know?
Yeah.
It's part of what gets you here.
Over 20 years, basically. You know, starting when we're teens, basically.
So it's like you don't buy the hype of like the kids that are like all of a sudden they sell a dad hat and they're on a beach.
You know, honestly, I think there's a lot of intelligent kids out there. But even looking at Neek, you know, he didn't have a glamorous start. You know, he's worked at retail for years before he really got what it is. You know, he made his relationships. Anti-Social Social Club didn't pop off because he got like super lucky. A lot of it was luck because of relationship building through the years of working in all the different places that he did.
And taste and knowledge and understanding of the space that you're going into and the kids that are going to buy your products. But a lot of people see that and they're like, I'm going to start a t-shirt brand. I'm going to start printing up t-shirts in my mom's basement, and then boom, that's it. Like, it's a lot more to it. A lot more story building.
But also that's part of the hustle too. You have to try, and you probably won't succeed. And then you do the next thing and you learn from the previous failures. I think that's probably one of the things that, you know, through John's stories about failing at different startups and me trying a lot of different things and eventually settling on just one thing.
Perfect. Yeah. Things. That's a really good note to end on, guys. Thank you so much for coming in. Really.
Thanks for having us.
Stories and some wisdom with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks. Good stuff.